Something that's almost unique about time trialling in Britain are the longer races. Anything from 50-mile time trials, 100-mile time trials, even 12 hours, and occasionally a 24-hour. So if you want to do these terrific races, and they're very rewarding to do, what do you have to do? What do you have to know? The equipment for a long distance time trial is pretty much the same as the equipment for a short distance time trial. This is my own time trial bike. I would use this for 10 miles, 25, 50, 100. If I wanted to do a 12-hour, I'd use the same bike. The only thing I might do for a very long time trial would be try and put the tri-bar pads up a little, just to make the position a little bit less aggressive. It's not unknown for people in longer time trials to want to ride a different bike entirely. Some people want to ride a road bike, which is a lot more comfortable, but it is slower. But again, it's a personal choice. Some people, even doing something like a 12-hour, start off on a time trial bike and swap to a road bike towards the end just to save their back. The other thing you might want to change is helmets. This is the kind of helmet we usually associate with time trialing, with the point at the back. Those work at their best when the back of the helmet is right on top of the shoulders, which means your neck is stuck in the same position the entire time, which clearly for a long time trial is not that comfortable. So some riders for longer time trials go for a helmet like this, which doesn't have the point. It's a more rounded shaped helmet, and exactly where you hold your head doesn't really matter all that much. And as with a short distance time trial, probably the easiest piece of speed you're going to get is from what you're wearing, which is of course the skin suit, which I have on under my jacket. And this is, again, fairly standard skin suit. This one has got a couple of pockets in the back, which for a long distance time trial is really nice, because you can just put a couple of gels or an energy bar in there, and it's just another food carrying option. So there you are, fairly simple options and equipment for long distance time trial, not that complicated, and as I say, pretty similar to short distance. The most obvious question when you come to ride a longer time trial is, how do you pace it? If you're used to riding something like a 25 and you make the step up to a 50, you find that actually the pace is not that much slower. The event might be twice as long, but really all you're doing is taking that little top edge off your 25 pace. It is almost the same. Move up again to 100. Well, you can't ride 100 flat out because it's going to be 4 or 5 hours out there. So you have to back off a bit. But you probably don't back off quite as much as you might expect, because if you've got a power meter on the bike, you'll find you're going to ride 100 at 75 or 80% of the power that you would use to ride a 25. 100 is probably the hardest race to pace, simply because it is so in the middle. There's no real physiological landmark for you to use. There's no breathing pattern. There's not even really a pulse that you can use. You have to feel your way into it. But experience really rewards 100 riders, and it's worth getting out there and doing it. When you get to a 12-hour is actually almost easier again, because the 12-hour has to be slow. If you ride a 12-hour too fast from the outset, you're going to die 1,000 deaths before you finish. The other thing about a 12-hour is that actually nutrition is a very important part of the pacing in a 12-hour, and that's why nutrition is what we're going to look at next. When it comes to long distance time trials, the golden rule is probably this: the longer the time trial, the more important the nutrition. For a 50-mile time trial, you might be able to get away with not much more than just sticking a water bottle on the bike like you would do for a medium-length training ride, as long as you start drinking that early enough. As soon as you get to something like 100, or you get to a 12-hour, then it becomes much more important. Essentially, the faster you want to ride a bike, the more carbohydrate you use. For a ride like 100 miles, 12 hours, it's always going to be a mix of carbohydrate and fat, but if you want to do it quickly, the thing you have to do is to make sure there's enough carbohydrate coming in to replace the carbohydrate that you're burning. Now, the big problem with this is you can only take on board about 70 grams of carbohydrate an hour. For the same kind of logic, you can only absorb about 700 milliliters of water. You can do it as drinks, you can take gels, you can take energy bars, you can take anything you like, pancakes, rice pudding, some people even take fruit, but those are still the numbers you're dealing with. The longer the race, the more likely it is that you want to take on board some solid food. Shorter events, probably okay on liquid and gels, which are easier to take on board when you're working pretty hard. A lot of riders for a long time trial just stick to the same position they use for shorter events, because in the end, if it's fast for a shorter event, it'll be fast for a longer event. The only change you might come is if you feel it's not going to be comfortable enough. If you find in a longer event that you start to get lower back pain, shoulder pain, you might think about, for instance, raising the tri-bar pads a little so your elbows are a little higher. Just takes a little of the strain off your lower back. And you probably want to think about just relaxing the shoulders a bit, not going for that super narrow, super low head position, because in the end, in the long run, over a 4 or 5 hour ride, it'll probably work out quicker. So, there we are. That's just a few thoughts to make a long time trial a little more comfortable, a little more pleasant, and crucially, a little bit faster. If you haven't done a long time trial before, honestly, go and try it. It is one of the most rewarding things you can do on a bike.